So in this video, we're going to talk about Azure PowerShell. Now, Azure PowerShell has a little bit of a complicated history. At the end of 2018, Microsoft deprecated the old version of Azure PowerShell that was called Azure RM. Now, as of 2019 and beyond, the new standard is called AZ module. So if you're using the Azure RM module, you're a little out of date. Now, I have both installed on my system. I have PowerShell 5.1 installed, which is an older version of PowerShell that has the Azure RM modules. And I also installed PowerShell Core 6.2, and I installed the new AZ modules. So in this way, I was able to get both the old Azure RM modules and the new AZ modules running on my system side by side. Ordinarily, it's not possible to have both Azure RM and AZ. If you're going to go with one, I suggest getting the AZ module because that's just the new standard and there's no going back to Azure RM. But if you do need Azure RM on your system for historical reasons, then I do suggest having two versions of PowerShell essentially. I'm going to put a link to this web page that shows you how to do this in the resources section of this video. And you can see how to download PowerShell Core 6, which is a new version of PowerShell, and run this install module script in order to get the AZ module installed alongside of PowerShell. Okay, if it's a little bit confusing, I apologize, but we have PowerShell and we have the Azure extensions for PowerShell. Now, I'm going to update my version of AZ. I'm running 2.3.2 right now, but I happen to know that Microsoft has 2.5 out there, and I know this because the documentation page shows documentation for 2.5. So I'm going to run the install module command, but I'm going to put this -force that will force it to install an updated version. So when I'm going to hit enter, it's going to now go to the web internet and grab these modules, the updated 2.5 version modules, and we'll see this on screen. Now, there's quite a number of them. There's a few dozen modules, and so it's going to run through them one by one in alphabetical order. So we can see we're on the AZ.Bs now. We're going to be AZ.C. So I'm going to let that run for a second, and fast forward the video. When we come back, it'll be installed. Now that was pretty quick. In less than a minute, it installed a new version of 2.5. Now we're going to see something strange when I run the get installed module command again. It's actually going to come back with two versions of the AZ module installed. So there is no update process within PowerShell for AZ module. You basically are forced to install the next release of it. Now this is okay, because the import module command, when we do go to use these modules, it will grab the latest module by default. So it will grab the 2.5 module if it exists. So having both installed on my system isn't going to hurt anything or shouldn't hurt anything, much like having multiple versions of .NET Framework installed on your system. There is a way to uninstall 2.3.2 if that bothers you, but you can see it's a rather lengthy PowerShell command. It goes through all the modules, installs, uninstalls them one by one. I'm just going to let it run. I don't think there's any harm in having two versions of AZ on your system. Now, before we can do anything with Azure in PowerShell, we need to log in. Now, the command for logging in is called connect AZ account. Now, when we run this command, it's going to actually force us to go into a web browser, do the login, and then come back to this. So you can see here, I say connect AZ account. It says go to this web browser and enter this code. So I'm actually going to copy this and open it up into a web browser. And you can see it's asking for the code. And so I'm going to copy the code here. Now it's going to have me log into my Azure account. So of course it's going to be different for you. Now I am already logged in a different tab, and so it recognizes me. And when I close this window, you can see that I'm logged in. So the first command you need to know for PowerShell is connect-az account. And that is required before we can do anything else against our Azure subscription. So most people that are watching this are only going to have a single Azure subscription. And if that's the case, then you don't really need to know this. But if you have multiple Azure subscriptions at your disposal, then you're going to want to be able to set the Azure subscription that you want to create resources in, because otherwise you may not be creating resources in the subscription that you wish. So we're in the PowerShell command here, and I'm already logged in. I connected to Azure, and now I'm running the command get-az subscription. Hit enter, and it comes up and says there are actually 3 subscriptions associated with my account, which is true. Now there is the subscription I use for my training, which is the first one. There's another subscription I use as a demonstration, and there's another client's subscription here. So if we are looking to set one of these subscriptions as being the active one, then what we need to do is basically create a context variable. So $context equals get AZ subscription. Got to spell it right. And we're going to pass in the parameter subscription ID. Now we're going to grab the ID from one of these subscriptions. I'm going to grab my primary one and paste it here. And that's going to get the context of the subscription and set this variable with it. Now we want to set AZ context to our context. By doing that, we're basically saying this is the subscription we're going to be using to create resources in this PowerShell session. So if you are facing multiple subscriptions, there's a very easy method here with the get AZ subscription and the set AZ context commands in order to set the one that you work with. So now that we have PowerShell installed and the AZ module installed and we've connected to Azure, let's go ahead and create a virtual machine. That's in the past Azure RM module, the old one, it was a bit more difficult. You had to do a lot of different commands to create a virtual machine. Thankfully, Microsoft has remedied this, and the new AZ module makes it a lot simpler. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to create ourselves a resource group. Now, I find resource groups are helpful because it allows us to delete resources. So if a bunch of things get created into a resource group, once you're done with it, you can just delete the resource group and it deletes all of the associated resources. You'll find as you go into PowerShell that the commands are kind of predictable. I mean, there's always a verb followed by a hyphen, followed by the AZ, followed by the service name or the resource name. And so this is new AZ resource group. If I wanted to delete it, it would be delete resource group. If I wanted to get a list of all resources, it's get-az resource group. So let's go ahead and create new AZ resource group. Now we have to give it a name, -name, and I'm going to call this AZSJD new RG test. It has to be unique on my account for this region, and I will hopefully that has not been done before. I have to choose a location. Location is the region. So I'm going to put this in the East US region. Hit enter, and this will go and create the resource group. We can see here it says succeeded. If we did go into the Azure portal, we would see an empty resource group with this name in it. Now we want to create the virtual machine. The command for creating a virtual machine is new AZVM. Very easy to remember in this instance. Now, the good thing about this is that it used to take many different commands to create a virtual machine, and now we can just give it the settings just like we do in the portal, and Azure will go off and create those resources. So, resource group name, we just created the AZSJD new RG test resource. So let's go ahead, use that one. Now we have to give the VM a name. That's -name. And this is called AZSJD new VM. Location, let's put the virtual machine and all of its resources in the same location as the resource group. We have to give the virtual network a name. Now, if we had an existing one, we could specify it. In this case, we don't. So we're going to give it a new name, and it'll create a new virtual network for me. Now, subnet, I'm happy with the default subnet name. The network security group. So if I say, if I hit the tab key, it automatically fills it. So security group name, and this is new NSG. And find the public IP address. So if we want this to have a public IP address and give that IP address a name, my IP address. And finally, which ports we want to get into this. Now, by default, you want none of them, but maybe you want 80 for the web server and 3389, which is the RDP port. Okay. Maybe we want 443 as well for the other web server. So 3389. So this new AZVM command, we're giving it all of the parameters just like we're going through the wizard. And when we hit enter, it should go off and create this virtual machine. Now these are going to be the administrator credentials. Remember, when we create a virtual machine, we have to give it a user ID and password. And so I'm going to give it the user ID. Thankfully, it still hides the password from me. And so I'm going to hit enter. So this is what we're going to use RDP to get access to the virtual machine using these credentials. Here we are showing us 8%. We're going to let that run. We'll come back to it. So that was it. It basically went off, created a new virtual machine within Azure. It's coming back with this status to say that it's worked. So let's head over to the Azure portal and just see that it's there. So this is cool. The AZSJD new VM is indeed running in that resource group. It's got an IP address. We can see that it successfully ran. Okay. Now we could obviously from this point go in RDP into the machine. We made sure that the port number was open, download the RDP file and connect right into it. But I just wanted to demonstrate to you that using PowerShell, relatively easy nowadays to create a virtual machine in one single command. I mean, we created the resource group, but in one single command, we've got a virtual machine. Now you'll notice that we didn't enter the instance type. We didn't add any additional disks or tagging. There's a lot of things we left out here, but Azure just went ahead and took the default size. So if we go back to the portal, we can see that it's a DS1 machine, so a very small machine. And if we wanted something different, we could have specified a different instance type. We also didn't specify the operating system, and it chose this Windows Server 2016. But if you need to use PowerShell to create a VM, I mean, look how simple it is. It could be fairly simple. Now we showed that we could create a VM, but it's not just the creation of VMs. You can actually call, you can update the VM, you can start the VM, you can stop the VM using PowerShell. So I'm going to say stop, move my cursor here, stop AZVM. Now the resource group, we're going to specify it as AZSJD new RG test. And the name of the VM, we'll specify it as AZSJD JD new VM. And when I hit enter, it's going to ask me to confirm that I do want to stop the VM, and then it's going to go off and stop the VM just as if I was doing it myself in the portal. Now we can see that took about 1.5 minutes to do, which is about standard for even using the portal when you hit the stop button. Starting the VM, as you would expect, it's just the start-azvm command. And so I can confuse poor Azure by issuing the start VM command as soon as I hit the stop, and then that VM will start up again. Now that only took about 20 seconds, which is pretty good. And so we can, again, manipulate almost anything to do with the VM. Anything you can do within the portal, you can do within PowerShell or within CLI, in fact.